August 2nd, 1944, 9:30 a.m., Staff Sergeant Chester B. Opdyke Jr. crouched at the jungle's edge, his eyes fixed on Barrigada, a crossroads village baking in the brutal summer heat. 300 yards of open ground stood between his squad and one of the only freshwater sources on Guam, water thousands of GIs needed to survive. Without it, taking the island would be impossible. Opdyke motioned his scouts forward. Andzelik and Private Salvatore Capobianco crept into the clearing, rifles at the bayonets up. Andzelik froze. 3 Japanese soldiers darted across a trail ahead. The signal was clear. The enemy was here. Then the gunfire came like a thunderclap. Andzelik dropped, lifeless. Capobianco screamed, bullets digging into his arm and leg. Opdyke staggered as a round ripped into his arm. The air exploded with machine gun fire. Snipers picked off the unit's officers and heavy weapons crews. Pinned down and bleeding, Opdyke's squad faced annihilation. Ahead, Baragada held the water they needed, but crossing those 300 yards would demand more than they had left to give, or so it seemed. Guam, the largest island in the Marianas and just 1,350 miles from Tokyo, was of great strategic importance to Admiral Chester W. Nimitz's island-hopping strategy and a necessary step for tightening the noose around Japan. The U.S. invasion, launched on July 21, 1944, aimed to wrest the island from Japanese control and transform it into a critical base for long-range B-29 bombers and fleet resupply operations. The assault began with an unprecedented 13-day bombardment designed to obliterate Japanese defenses, yet the defenders' strength and defenses were painfully underestimated, paving the way for a brutal encounter. The Marines of the 3rd Division and 1st Provisional Brigade stormed the beaches side by side with the Army's 77th Infantry Division, which advanced inland through dense jungle. Every inch was costly for the GIs. By late July, US forces had secured a foothold, enabling a 2-pronged push to crush Japanese resistance. American troops had braved the brutal landings, but now, amid the sweltering jungle, things like water became more pressing than even the Japanese threat. As the Marines swept north along the western coast, the 77th Infantry Division struck eastward across Guam's rugged spine. The advance was grueling, but one objective loomed above all others: Barrigada. This unassuming village held a 30,000-gallon water well, the only reliable freshwater source in the region. For thousands of parched American troops, it was a lifeline. For the Japanese, it was a final line of defense. August 2nd, 1944, after the devastating ambush that left Opdyke and several of his men wounded and pinned down, Captain Cawthron quickly realized the gravity of the situation. With his advance guard crippled and in need of rescue, and the enemy's strength unknown, he knew that decisive action was needed to prevent the entire company from being caught in the crossfire. Cawthron immediately ordered his riflemen to locate and outflank the Japanese emplacements. He understood that the only way to break the ambush was to find and neutralize the enemy's firing points. The men of Company 1 fanned out, using the dense jungle foliage for cover as they sought to encircle their foe. Hoping to quickly alleviate the pressure on Opdyke's beleaguered squad, Cawthron ordered his 1st platoon to cross an open draw and attack the Japanese from the side. However, as the platoon advanced, a hidden enemy machine gun opened fire, cutting down 3 men in a hail of bullets. The sudden burst of fire stopped the flanking maneuver cold, forcing the remaining men to seek cover and regroup. As the fighting intensified, snipers began targeting Company 1's leaders and heavy weapons crews, making the thrust impossible and forcing the men to retreat. At 8:40 a.m., Major General Andrew Bruce ordered a second, more deliberate push. Captain Leonard H. Seagar led his tanks back into Barrigada, their engines snarling as they navigated the village and pressed northwest toward the towering Mount Barrigada. Near the base, they encountered a hastily constructed roadblock. Shells exploded, splintering the barricade into debris, but the trail beyond was a trap. A Stuart tank got stuck on a stump and chaos erupted. The jungle exploded with gunfire as Japanese soldiers unleashed machine guns and 20mm cannon fire, their rounds hammering the thinly armored tanks. From the undergrowth, screaming Japanese fighters surged, climbing onto the tanks with grenades and satchel charges. Seagar's men sprayed fire in all directions. The immobilized tank's crew worked to get it free while its armor held. With the air thick with smoke and blood, the column blasted its way out of the ambush and retreated, shaken but alive. Barrigada and its water depot would not be taken easily. Another advance was soon made by Lieutenant Willis J. Munger, leading 2nd Platoon, Company B, 1st Battalion, 307th Infantry Regiment of the 77th Infantry Division. His objective was the Green House, a two-story structure that served as a key Japanese stronghold in Barrigada. Capturing it was critical, as it offered a high ground position over the area and would signify the first step in securing the village and its vital water well. Munger, a young officer already known for his daredevil attitude, thought the task seemed like a walk in the park. His platoon advanced methodically, fanning out across the open ground. The encroaching jungle pulsed with an eerie stillness. Rifles at the ready, the GIs scanned for movement among the dense vegetation. As they advanced, they passed a burning shack off the side that seemed insignificant. American tracer rounds had set it alight, and it was on the verge of collapse. Then it happened. With a metallic screech that tore through the din of battle, the shack's remains burst apart. Out of the inferno, a Type 97 Chiha medium tank emerged. Scorched iron and a roaring cannon took the USGIs by surprise. The tank's guns swiveled toward the advancing platoon, and in an instant, the battlefield became a meat grinder. The Chiha's turret spat fire in every direction, with a shell even slamming into the greenhouse with a deafening explosion. Shrapnel and debris rained down. Munger's men caught in the open dove for whatever cover they could find: rocks, craters, or the bodies of their fallen comrades. After leaving several US infantrymen deceased or injured in the mud, the tank turned toward a nearby aid station, leaving carnage in its wake, then veered to the regimental command post. For Munger and many of his men, the battle ended tragically. As they tried to retreat after the spectacular tank attack, he fell to a mortar round, a devastating blow to the already shattered 2nd Platoon. At 1:30 p.m., the men of King Company, 305th Infantry Regiment, surged forward to try to take Barrigada. They weren't alone. 5 M5A1 light tanks advanced with them, their turret-mounted guns searching for targets. Somewhere in the tangle of greenery, another Japanese tank waited, concealed. The ambush was swift and brutal. One M5A1 burned where it was struck, its crew unable to escape. 3 infantrymen fell beside it where they had sought cover. Pinned down and helpless against camouflaged sharpshooters, King Company flattened themselves against the dirt. For hours, the road remained a grim tableau until 4 M4 Sherman tanks of the 706th Tank Battalion burst onto the scene. Their 75mm cannons tore the enemy tank with uncanny precision, but the victory came too late. Dusk fell, and the 305th's advance stalled. Another failed attempt. Meanwhile, on the 307th Infantry's front, the situation grew more dire. Munger's men scrambled to evacuate. Men ran across Barrigada's outskirts under relentless sniper fire. Hidden riflemen targeted medics and stretcher-bearers ruthlessly. It took another coordinated Sherman attack to clear the way and have the wounded pulled to safety. As the tanks withdrew, Japanese fire intensified, turning its fury on George Company's security teams. 1st Platoon, led by 1st Lieutenant James T. Whitney, found themselves in the open, caught in a merciless hail of machine gun fire from the forest's edge. Men dropped one by one. When relief came at nightfall, only a handful of Whitney's platoon were still standing. Among the 26 casualties was Whitney himself, his leadership cut short in the bloody chaos. By day's end, the 77th Infantry Division had suffered a punishing initiation into combat. The 307th recorded 22 lost and 63 wounded. The 305th, 7 fallen and 35 wounded. Worse still, the division had made no real progress. Barrigada remained firmly in Japanese hands as night cloaked the battlefield. General Bruce, grappling with fractured unit coordination and treacherous jungle terrain, ordered a relentless night bombardment to raze the village. Offshore warships pounded the tiny settlement with naval artillery. At dawn, American howitzers joined the orchestra of destruction. Mortar fire followed, softening the ground for another push. But when the infantry advanced at first light for what they expected could be another difficult clash, they found Barrigada eerily silent. The Japanese had melted away overnight, leaving only ruins. By mid-afternoon, Mount Barrigada was in American hands. Resourceful engineers quickly restored the precious well in town, and for the first time, the 77th Infantry could refill their canteens with fresh water. Scattered firefights erupted with Japanese holdouts, but the main force had regrouped, readying their defenses near Mount Santa Rosa and Yigo. On August 7th, the final assault began. Waves of B-25 Mitchell bombers and P-47 Thunderbolts screamed from above, dropping payloads on enemy positions. The 305th Infantry pushed along the coast. The 306th enveloped the enemy's flanks, and the 307th charged head-on toward Yigo. The breakthrough came when a platoon from the 306th outflanked the defenders, overrunning their positions with bayonets and grenades. Dozens of Japanese soldiers fell, and their equipment was obliterated. Remarkably, not a single American was injured. By August 8th, the 307th claimed Mount Santa Rosa's summit. The remaining Japanese defenders had vanished into the jungle, their last line of defense broken. The liberation of Guam was complete, but the cost was steep. The Statue of Liberty Division counted 265 killed in action and over 800 wounded during their baptism of fire.